So welcome to Anavate's webinar, where we will be discussing, showcasing, and celebrating the topic of talent acquisition and workforce planning with easily one of our most remarkable customers, Globalization Partners, otherwise known as GP. So we will be recording this webinar and make it readily available to everyone who would like to revisit it after this session. We're going to follow this agenda accordingly. We will begin with introductions of Anavate Partners and Anaplan, and spend a moment highlighting both's unique capabilities and strong suits. We will follow this by handing the baton to Globalization Partners, who will introduce themselves, the problem they were faced with, and how they partnered with Anavate and Anaplan to solve it in the form of providing highlights of the solution they ultimately implemented. We will then transition into a live demo of the Anaplan platform, followed by plenty of time for Q&A. So my name is Tristan Gaynor. I am the co-founder and partner at Anavate. We are a cloud technology and implementation firm based in Phoenix, Arizona. Our reach extends far beyond the desert. We are a coast-to-coast and global firm in our service capabilities with teams in Arizona, California, New York, Michigan, and a wonderful team in Kazakhstan. Anavate is aligned with three best-in-cloud technology providers, Anaplan, Workato, and Dataiku, with Anaplan being the core of our service offerings since our inception in 2019. From Anaplan, we are joined from Koros Bezad, who heads up the Workforce Planning Center of Excellence. Anaplan is a cloud technology offering centered around, you guessed it, enterprise planning across all business units and business use cases, be they in finance, HR, sales, marketing, or supply chain. That is what makes Anaplan unique. So unlike other planning offerings in the market that only handle one or two things, Anaplan differentiates itself as a platform that can tackle any business use case you can throw at it. That is what enables what we call connected planning. So if an assumption in one part of the business changes, the financial or operational impact of that flows through to the other relevant parts of the organization. So for example, if a revenue target in the organization or if demand for a certain product increases, that could signal an alert regarding whether or not you should go add more headcount necessary to deliver on that target. And then you could actually add the headcount to your plan and see the financial impact right away. This is just one day in the life example of what Anaplan can do. What most organizations are doing now is disparate planning across multiple different silos in complicated, messy spreadsheets across different teams that are spending more time aggregating data, fixing formulas, et cetera, than actually driving analysis or workflows associated with their job. Globalization Partners is not one of those organizations. They have truly done some incredible things that I'm very excited to hear them share with all of you. So with that said, I will hand this off to our wonderful partners at GP.
Hey, thanks, Tristan. Welcome, everybody. Good morning and maybe good afternoon for some. I'm Jerry Gage Anderson. I'm the VP of Corporate FP&A and Business Intelligence at Globalization Partners. And we also have Wendy Wen here online, who is basically our head of Anaplan COE transformation. So we started on the journey a year and a half ago with a use case that has developed into significantly much more. But the largest problem that we were having, as a lot of high growth companies do, is kind of keeping a pulse on headcount. And it's not just the financial impacts, it's the operational. So we looked to Anaplan to solve the operational and the financial challenges that were becoming a headache. We were in spreadsheets. The spreadsheets were getting updated, passed around, shared, but we had too many people touching it, and it just wasn't dynamic enough. For example, in spreadsheets, we had to say, okay, we want to cut these 10 racks and add these 20. We were doing this all the time because, again, in a high growth company with lots of changing priorities, things are very dynamic. We'd go through this exercise. It'd be very manual because we'd have to say, okay, what are the status of these 10 racks that we want to cut? We'd have to go into another system and say, oh, by the way, these 10 racks that you want to cut, half of them are at offer stage. So you can't cut those 10. You can only cut 5. You have to find 5 more. So just this back and forth to do something that should be very basic was extremely painful. It was wrought with error because then we would report out the spreadsheet of our headcount plus hiring racks, what's our total headcount? And we all had different numbers because different people touching it, doing things to the spreadsheet. So we came to Anavate and Anaplan. We unified our TA platform with our workforce planning platform so that real time, every 5 minutes, we got up-to-date information on recs. So we could go into Anaplan and know, okay, if we're going to move these recs, we had information that says, okay, this rec is this far along in the stage. Here's kind of the impact. And by the way, we're having issues in these certain kind of job codes because the budget that has been benchmarked, we're going over the market. And as a lot of us know, we're in a very high inflationary period. So we were able to identify where we're seeing overages in certain recs. And with an Anaplan, we could adjust the budgets easily and quickly so that we could continue the process of the approvals and not slow it down by having to re-benchmark and do things that were just unnatural. We needed to go fast. So with that, we probably saved 200% in time, and time to value was significantly increased because we were all aligned, we all had the same numbers, and it was real time and up to date. We have coupled that follow on with productivity, other workforce planning solutions, as Tristan mentioned, where we can now provide forecasts to our operations teams, and they can know based on that Anaplan model what the shortfalls are by job types, by region, and they could then push that back and say, here's we need 5 more recs in this planning cycle based on the latest forecast, push that back to the TA model, and we're all connected on productivity planning, workforce planning, which is the financials, and TA, so they know what to operate, what to execute on and recruit, and what not to. So with these solutions, we've been able to reduce significant time, add a lot of value to the organization, and the amount of change and what if that we go through has been greatly increased with the amount of scenarios we can now do versus in Excel that would take days, that now takes 10 minutes.
Thank you for that, Jerry. Yeah, and it has been an incredible experience for not only myself but all of our firm, and I know folks at Anaplan that know your account intimately, to see what you all have been able to accomplish and pulling in just such a cross-functional group of individuals, from HR to different niches within HR to sales ops to the pricing team and some of the people that are really running some very deep analytics, and now they're leveraging Anaplan. It has been truly incredible. And one thing that I will call out is all of this has not been set up just by consultants. Jerry alluded to a center of excellence, and Globalization Partners has taken on the role of their own internal development team of Anaplan. So they own the tool now. A number of these use cases were built entirely by themselves. Sure, they leveraged a partnership with Anavate early on to get the ball rolling, but they've been able to take that football and drive it across the goal line on their own. And that is a sign of a very happy, empowered customer that is doing incredible things. So we are very proud of Globalization Partners. We're very excited to walk through a demonstration of some of the things they've been able to do with this initial land solution in talent acquisition. And that's another unique piece of this. Most customers don't begin their Anaplan journey in talent acquisition, in workforce planning. They start in finance and extend from there. But Globalization Partners have the foresight to understand that this is what connects our business. People are the lifeblood of our organization. Hence, that is where we're going to start. And what we found as we've built this out, that talent acquisition model and the drivers and assumptions there extend to every other model that's been built one way or another. So with that said, we're very excited again to showcase some of this. We'll have a Q&A at the end, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand this off to our senior consultant and Anaplan wizard, Anthony Bonfiglio, who's going to take you through step-by-step some of the activities that Globalization Partners is now engaging in Anaplan that was previously disparate in silos across the business, et cetera. So in the meantime, please feel free to send a or send questions privately as this demonstration goes on. So then during the Q&A, we can take as much time as we need to answer them. So with that said, Anthony, I will hand it off to you.
Hi, I'm Anthony Bonfiglio, a consultant with Anavate Partners. So now that you've heard a bit about Anaplan and this tool we've built, I'm going to show you around the platform and demonstrate some of what it can do. Now, keep in mind that this is built to be highly customizable to specific client needs. What I'm going to show you is just an example of one way of doing it. The essential functionality is to allow for actions in Anaplan to result in automatic actions in your applicant tracking system of choice, and vice versa. In this case, we're using Greenhouse because that's what Globalization Partners uses, but this automation would also work with softwares like ADP, Workday, or Lever. Now, we like to use a powerful tool called Workato to set up this integration because it's a straightforward and code-free solution that can be easily leveraged to automate business processes. But there are many ways to connect the two softwares without changing any of this model structure. Now, in this demo, I'm first going to show you how things look on the Anaplan side. We'll see what it looks like for workforce planning or FP&A to create new job requisitions or revise old ones. We'll make these changes in a tentative sandbox plan, review them via an approval process, and create a final hiring plan. Then we're going to take a brief look at how variance reporting works in Anaplan. We can create distinct hiring plans and compare them to one another. Finally, we'll look at how Anaplan can create dynamic forecast reports. We can review historical data for headcount and compensation and see how our outstanding job requisitions will affect our forecasts. After this, our integration will feed our changes through to Greenhouse, where our recruiting team will pick up these hiring requisitions and start looking to fill the roles. We'll look at how Anaplan can automate some of the job setup process, and then we'll make some hires. Finally, we'll be returning to Anaplan to see how changes feed from the applicant tracking system back into our headcount forecasts, and we'll discuss what this means for your business. So, we are in Anaplan. I have taken the liberty of setting up this homepage that shows a more detailed agenda of the dashboards I will navigate through over the course of this demo. From here, we're able to navigate to all pages in the application. The workforce planning team would start here. In Anaplan, we have grids, selectors, KPIs, action buttons, and other types of UX functionality. In this grid here, we see our sandbox hiring plan. This is where we make changes to our hiring plan pending approval. Each of these lines is a job requisition, a role that we need to fill, be it from backfill or net new headcount. All of these green requisitions have already been sent to our recruiting team, and the postings are active in Greenhouse. So let's start by creating some new requisitions. You can create them either from scratch or by copying an existing requisition. You can also specify how many to create. Now, in this demo, we'll be dealing with just a couple, but we can create as many as we need. For example, let's see how we can deal with scale. If we wanted to create 300, we would just select a requisition to copy and press this button. Now, all we would have to do is fill out a start date, and all of these requisitions would be ready for approval and ready to send to our recruiting team. Anaplan's ability to handle scale is a reason why both large and small organizations leverage this tool. So whether you're hiring or firing 20,000 people a year, or if you're in the middle of a growth spurt looking to hire 1,000 new heads in the next 12 months, Anaplan can become your single source of truth for all of this. Now, in this case, we don't actually want to deal with 100 requisitions, so let's just delete them. So to continue with the demo, let's go ahead and create 2 requisitions by copying and another from scratch. In this case, let's say we want to hire 2 solution architects and an HR manager. Now, we see that we have a number of fields to fill out, some of which are for financial planning and Anaplan, while others will feed into custom fields in our applicant tracking system to ensure that our recruiting team has all the information they need. We would select the role name, the department, the location, whether that worker is remote or in person, as well as the type of employee that we're looking to hire. In addition to this, we would fill out salary information for our forecasts, as well as the salary range that our recruiters should look to hire in. We'll also fill out a start date And additionally, we can see who the requisition was created by what user. Anaplan has an advanced system of user-based permissions, and we could make it so that department leads are only able to create requisitions for their specific department, for instance. We can also revise existing requisitions. Let's say for this posting here, we don't actually need a senior model builder. We can see that the status has changed to revisions need approval. Changes made in Anaplan will go through the approval process and then feed into existing job postings in Greenhouse. Below, we can leave any comments we might have for the approval team. Notice how the fields appear red for any requisition which is yet to be approved or where any revisions have been made. We can see also by this admin alert field whether or not a requisition is ready to be approved. By clicking on this one, we can see that we have not filled out a start date. At the bottom, we can see our latest approved hiring plan. None of our new requisitions will appear here yet, but we do see the places where we revised our existing requisitions. Keep in mind that in Anaplan, this kind of conditional formatting with dynamic alerts and colors can be configured in any way that you need. It can be built to support your business process and accommodate changing needs related to open headcount. Now that all of our requisitions are ready, let's push them through the approval process. For demo purposes, we have two levels of approval here, HR and finance. We could add or subtract levels or the ability to send requisitions back for revision. Now, if I was an HR manager, I would immediately notice that one of these requisitions has been revised while the others are new. I might want to check the approved plan below to see what the original value was for this revised field. Above, I have the ability to see what our current headcount is for any given location, as well as what's been proposed. I will also see any comments that workforce planning has left for me with each requisition. We can approve them one by one or as a group, which is useful in dealing with scale. So now these requisitions have been sent to our finance team for final approval. Similarly to the previous page, we can see any comments that might have been left for us or compare revisions to the approved plan below. In this case, it's just approve all. Now we can press this action button to add these requisitions that we've created to our approved hiring plan. At this point, we can see from the status that these are in our approved plan in Anaplan at this point, but our recruiting team does not have access to them yet. If we check these boxes here, we can release them to our applicant tracking system, and this sends them to our talent acquisition team for action. So we can see that the statuses have changed appropriately to pending addition to Greenhouse, and our integration will run. The value of this integration is that it removes room for user error. There is a single source of truth between Greenhouse and Anaplan. People working with either software will be assured that there are no mistakes. Every requisition that is open in Greenhouse has the right information, and no one has to work to ensure the data matches. Furthermore, it eliminates the time spent on tedious manual processes, like exporting data from Greenhouse to Anaplan and vice versa. The immediate feedback allows for a smoother and faster planning process, as TA can look to start filling these roles right away, rather than waiting for the next data push from Anaplan. It is also generally a big win for both finance and talent acquisition teams when they can focus on the use of their software of choice. It's not necessary to spend time training in TA and Anaplan, although you could, and finance can view in Anaplan all the information available in Greenhouse. They have a constant pulse on headcount and overall compensation expense. Now we can see that these requisitions have failed to open in Greenhouse. An error field will populate, and then the integration will run again until it is confirmed the job posting exists. So in this case, let's move on and see if our integration runs successfully. So before we head to Greenhouse, let's take a look at some of the variance reporting functionality that Anaplan offers. On this page, we can save our current approved plan and give it a name with comments. This way we can take a snapshot of what our hiring plan was at a certain point in time. Based on our requisitions that are currently open in Greenhouse, we can see the total forecasted additions to compensation and headcount resultant from our current plan. And we can compare this to past plans. In this case, we see how these numbers have gone down over time as we fill positions. Below, we can view these snapshots in order to easily compare between plans at different stages of the planning cycle. This way, despite any revisions we make, we can ensure that we don't lose any data. Now we can start looking at some historical data. This report shows us our forecasted new headcount and total hires the last year. Our data is filtered according to the selectors on the right. So if we wanted to see information for all departments, we might select this, and then our data changes accordingly. We can also view individual requisitions below according to the filters. We can filter these according to their status. And for closed requisitions, we can see key data points like the close date, why the requisition was closed, and how long it took us to fill that role. This information feeds directly into our headcount forecasts. For instance, a job posting closed due to backfill would not affect our headcount, but a new hire would increase it. This final report shows how we can use our Greenhouse integration, in order to automate forecasted compensation costs and headcount. First, we have a chart that shows our total headcount compensation alongside existing and forecasted headcount. We can filter this with the selections to the right. For instance, if we simply wanted to view data for specific quarters, we could do that. Now, below, we can see our headcount as it changes over time, as well as our compensation. Now, as we get into our forecast months, we will see that our forecasted headcount is added to the total. All approved requisitions will contribute to this total. We can see when these additions are approved, and the changes are carried forward as part of our forecasted totals. As we do this, we can also view our past save plans and compare our past forecast to our actuals. We can see how our plans have changed over time. We can look at a plan created in January, for instance. And as we go throughout the year, we could see how we've cut down on projected growth over time. We can also view this information at whatever level of granularity is desired. For instance, we could filter it down to one department and one region. Now, at this point, we're going to hand things over to our recruiting team and check out the requisitions we created earlier in Greenhouse. As our recruiting team looks at Greenhouse, they can see that these new requisitions have been created, and the job title has changed for our third requisition, from senior to junior. Furthermore, because these were different positions, some data has been populated differently. The pipeline and interview plan for the HR manager is different from the plan for the solution architect. This includes This is because the integration checks which role the requisition is for and creates different requirements for it. This includes specific interview questions, qualifications, and skills for the interviewer to look for. The process is highly flexible, and Anaplan can decide which job template to use based on any other factor or even a combination of factors. For instance, if there are different qualifications for the same role across different locations, or a different interview process for remote workers versus in-person workers, we can get even more specific. Now, while we're here, let's say that we've made some hires for some of these positions. In this case, we've hired some IT professionals in Toronto. As we do this, we can fill out the reason for closing the job. In this case, let's say that they were closed due to new hires. So the essential part of the Greenhouse to Anaplan integration is that users will always know how many open requisitions there are and what positions have been filled. As we'll see, jobs in our applicant tracking system of choice will automatically feed into the report we looked at before and revise headcount data in Anaplan. This ensures that the workforce planning process is always executed with the most current information. As we can see, our forecasts are already updated. Every 5 minutes, your forecasted compensation costs and headcount will be revised according to the latest data. So, you've now seen how this process works in one specific case. Why does this matter for you? Well, Anaplan allows this tool to be highly customizable, and any number of changes could be made without impacting the core structure of the integration. All of the functionality you've seen is flexible, subject to change based on your needs. It's designed to increase efficiency and automate existing work without adding any extra, to fit existing business processes rather than replace them. I'm now going to pass the mic over to my colleague, Tristan Gaynor.
Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. So what we'll do now is, we've received a number of questions that we will open up to the floor to walk through in the form of a Q&A. So with that said, I have a list here in front of me. Thank you to everyone who sent questions over. So the first that we have is around the notion of employee data. So the first question is, employee data is highly sensitive. How do you make sure that data stays under lock and key? Well, the way we set up Anaplan, so I can answer this question, and then Jerry, I think I'd like for you to chime in and how you and your team approach this. So with any data set in Anaplan, whether it is your general ledger, your employee roster, your CRM data, only the folks that are allowed to see, view, edit, and utilize that data for downstream calculations would be the only ones that can actually touch that. And the way we set that up is through Anaplan's powerful user permissions. So we can set up access based on who leads what department, who rolls up to whom from a role perspective. So managers can only see the data of the folks below them. And if they're not even allowed to do it, only HR can see various data sets. So very easy to maintain integrity of confidential information like employee data. And that's a fantastic question. But I'm curious to maybe share a live example. Jerry, do you have anything to share on this?
Yeah, so the way we've set this up is only 5 or 6 people can really see the details. And we're going through a process of reevaluating, well, if we want someone to be able to budget headcount, basically, we could set it up where you could say, I need a senior solution architect, right? You set it up, request it, right? But it goes back to the detail hub where all the detail information is, and then talent acquisition, HR, comp benefits, FP&A can then see that, right? So you can still set it up, which we're thinking about doing, where even if you own a budget, but you're not allowed to see the cost, you can see the headcount, You can request it, but behind the scenes, it's going to a very confidential area where only a few people have the ability to then control and update, the salary bands and all the other variable and long-term incentive comp, right? So there's multiple ways you can do it and keep it safe.
Thanks for that, Jerry.
Right now, it's very few.
So the next question is around the different types of reports that Anaplan can run. So can Anaplan run reports on workforce KPIs like diversity and inclusion, like compensation, stock comp, and a variety of other things? So that's a fantastic question. So because we can pull from any data source, and maybe Koros, I'll have you chime in on this. So for Anavate's response would be, because Anaplan can pull from any data source, be it ADP, Workday, Paylocity, Paycom, etc., all of the information you have in that system can be aggregated into Anaplan and then reported on in a number of different ways. So you can keep track of varying targets as it relates to these KPIs. And then ultimately downstream, as you've mentioned with some other KPIs like stock comp or overall compensation, as you saw today, you can build out forecasts of these key drivers that FP&A certainly cares a lot about, right? And as organizations continue to scale, investor bases continue to care about as well. So, Koros, do you have anything to chime in on that?
No, I think it's you hit it on the money, right? It's with Anaplan, it is so flexible that you can bring in any data, and I think typically, I think it starts with just really a headcount report. You bring in the costs, and then you can bring in all the other kind of more demographics. Now, what do you do with that demographics? So I guess depends on what are your plans that you want to do. Again, if you're looking at doing diversity and inclusion reporting, you can certainly do that. If you're doing workforce planning, you've got you can set targets for your diversity, track those targets, align those with your headcount plan, so to make sure that your recruiting is going in the right direction. Your promotion strategies, is aligned with your diversity strategy and targets, right? So it's really becomes the one single source of truth that where all this kind of comes together, and make sure that all these different plans and targets are all aligned and they kind of work together.
Fantastic. Thank you, Koros. So then, there's another question that was just sent to the chat. Inga, thank you for sending that. And that's a great question. So the question is, is there a capability for Anaplan to push multiple recs to Greenhouse from one rec? And this is something that we encountered with Globalization Partners and a lot of other organizations that are global in nature with a global remote workforce to say, okay, we need this one particular position filled, but it could be in any of these 5 different countries or 10 different countries. And the ability to Anaplan do that is incredibly strong. So essentially what would happen in Anaplan is the creation of one requisition that, and I don't remember exactly how I did this with Globalization Partners, and I don't believe this is the way we did it. But what we could do is we could have one requisition tied to many, right? So there's a one-to-many relationship, and then that many is all sent over to Greenhouse, tied to various job templates, et cetera. So, Jerry, do you have anything on that? Or Wendy?
Actually, I think when you guys came in, you realized we were using our TA application incorrectly, and within our specific one, not saying all are created the same, is that there is this hierarchy within a rec where you could have sub-recs, for lack of a better term, to allow to post. And we were doing it actually the wrong way, and we fixed that with this. So we actually fixed
that's fantastic
processes in Greenhouse.
So I'm going to follow. I have a couple more questions here, Inga. I like the last question you asked, but I'm just going to move on and we'll try to get back to that. So the next one is, how quickly can this update? So I think that question is referring to the headcount forecast, the integration between the various systems. So what we've set up is a 5-minute integration. So essentially what that results in is an integration or a headcount forecast and compensation expense forecast that's updating every 5 minutes. And it's as simple as that. So again, we're leveraging the integration tool called Workato. That's the one Anavate strongly believes in. But there are many other ways to go about doing that integration. And each of them has their own limitations and benefits as well. So the next question is, we set up job templates in Greenhouse. Can you share a little bit more detail on how Anaplan interacts with those templates? And this is a fantastic question, and a question that I know we have had many conversations around with a number of other customers of ours, even outside of GP, where the recruiting team sets up job templates in their applicant tracking system. So all they have to do is they have to go in and create a job, maybe input one or two things, and then everything else will be filled out. So what we will do in Anaplan to make sure that at least the workflows of creating the requisition are all centralized is once they get sent over, we're also sending over the relevant information to tie a newly opened requisition to a specific job template. So when Anthony was walking everyone through the Greenhouse side, and you could see how the different interview paths were already laid out for all of the different roles. That's just one of many examples. That is tied to the notion that Anthony sent over a job that is tied to a particular job template in Greenhouse. Hence, everything else that was relevant began to be populated. So it's a very simple process to once you get it running, and it certainly saves time. But what it also is driving is a lot of collaboration, again, between the folks running the Anaplan side, be they finance or someone else in HR or both, and the talent acquisition team. So now the talent acquisition team is automating part of their job, which would be, I need to go fill out, the interview path for this particular open requisition, et cetera, and all the relevant pieces of a job template. But while they're doing that, they're not actually doing their job, which is hiring great people for the organization that they're a part of. This enables them to focus on what they need to do to hire the best people and enable those teams to spend their time doing what they do best. So that's a great question. And I think it, again, speaks to the notion that Anaplan is a great reporting tool, general planning tool, but it ultimately becomes a decision-making tool because less time is being spent on the administrative duties and more time is being spent doing what people have already been hired to do. For recruiters, that is recruit incredible people. For finance, that is orchestrate business performance, and for HR, that is build a workplace that is productive for the organization and wonderful for the people that make it productive. So that's fantastic. So I'm going to jump back to Inga's second question, which I appreciate being sent over. So what is the workflow for the recruiting team once a rec is pushed through Greenhouse from Anaplan? So as I kind of alluded to, it could be as hands-off as necessary. I'll hand it back to Jerry to kind of speak to how Pooja and the recruiting team over there, what they do once they get the football. But a lot of organizations that we come across, it's pretty hands-off. Oh, rec's open, let's look at it, let's go through it. Okay, who's going to hire it on the recruiting team? Like who owns this one? And it's as simple as that workflow. Once everything is filled out and once the button is pushed to say this rec is closed, it gets sent back to Anaplan and recruiting's job is done. So very hands-free, but I'll hand it off to Jerry to give a little bit more of a live example.
Yeah, this is one where the time to value and everything else was huge for us. Is that when you, for example, create a brand new rec, it then goes to our total rewards team to then benchmark and comp it. Now, if like us, because we're high growth and we're expanding all over the world, it's going to be a rec in a new country. We have to submit that to say, hey, we don't have a job ID for this rec or this job type in this country. Goes to TA, they benchmark it, create the job ID with the benchmarking salary. Then once it gets approved by FP&A and finalized, and there's some
Right.
things behind the scenes that make sure if it's a backfill rec, you have to select the person being backfilled. You can't have 10 people as the backfill. I mean, there's a lot of validation along that process. But then once ultimately FP&A hits approve, then talent acquisition now sees it, and then they can push the button to either push it into Greenhouse selectively or not at all. So that's how it works for us. A lot of process and a lot of back and forth. So if all of a sudden someone wants to pay something, we're recruiting in the recruiting process, and the candidate they identify is higher than the job range, right? Then it has to go through back into Anaplan because everything has to be connected and say, okay, we authorize to approve the job rec to go up by 10K. Total rewards would do that via Anaplan. FP&A approves it, goes back, and now we can send out the offer. So it is, and then because it's all through the whole process, it's always connected to a workforce planning and our financials. So that's just the beauty of, the complicated process we created, but it actually saves so much time for everybody, and it's always
fantastic.
Accurate.
So there are three more questions I want to run through. So the next one, Sarah, thank you for asking, is the notion of overall workforce productivity. And there's no better group that I could think of to speak on productivity in general, considering that Globalization Partners built a productivity model. So Jerry, I appreciate you taking the time to help answer these questions, but I think it would be better to hear it from the horse's mouth itself. Could you speak on how Globalization Partners thought of productivity and how you went from building this talent acquisition application to thinking about workforce productivity in general?
Yeah, definitely. Happy to. So we have plans to do a few more, like sales productivity, but right now we're doing our operations team, where we've identified what are the kind of the KPI productivity metrics that's all fed into Anaplan, and then we can monitor that real time. So as we're about to finish a forecast or do like a light offline forecast, we'll update all the KPIs and productivity numbers that will impact global operations teams. Once they go in, see those updates, run their models, they can then say, okay, here's by job type, by region, country. They can see where there's going to be a deficit, identify those deficits in terms of how many FTE by job types are needed, and flow that back into TA workforce planning to go through the process that I just described as well. So it really is the connected planning journey that we're on, making sure that we're really not doing things outside of other systems, utilizing the workflow and the true connectivity of Anaplan. So that, again, another time to value for us significantly by keeping that all connected from the operational planning to the financial planning to the actual boots on the ground doing.
That's really fantastic. So Jerry, what it sounds like is
so
Anaplan in a way became the canary in the coal mine
on these
processes.
Right?
When okay, there's an alert that we don't have the proper coverage from our operations team to our customer base, based on maybe how many more customers have signed on with us, et cetera. And what that's now calling us to do is, when there's a gap, address the gap in the same system. I mean, that's incredible. Usually that would take place in multiple spreadsheets, emails, Slack messages, et cetera. So that's certainly something to highlight and something to celebrate that Globalization Partners was able to do. Great. So next question, thank you for asking this. This is great. And this is getting to some of the more core workforce planning functionalities, capabilities here. So this one is around the notion of company-wide merit increases. How does Anaplan handle that? And essentially, again, because Anaplan is pulling in so many particular data points from whatever your HRIS system is, and then obviously pulling back from your applicant tracking system, we have the ability to tie various, whatever logic you'd like to those KPIs. So for example, if you have company-wide merit increases that are specific by maybe role, region, and or tenure, because you have a start date tied to an employee and you have their region and their role coming in from their HRIS, now it's a simple logic of if then, then they get a 5% increase in their base salary year over year, or a 2% increase in their base salary year over year. And all of these could be managed on the dashboards that Anthony walked through today. So in very simple ways. So and again, headcount costs make up the vast majority of OpEx for most organizations. And in a time where organizations are beginning to tighten the belt, ensuring that things are standardized and under centralized, standardized, and there's one single source of truth as opposed to four, is key in moments like this. So those are fantastic questions, everyone. I'll give everyone one more minute to send some other questions, and otherwise I think we'd be ready to wrap it up. So I'll pause for a moment to see if any more come through. And if not, then we'll go ahead and wrap things up and make this available for anyone to revisit. Okay, fantastic. Well, I think we're set to go here. Thank you everyone for taking the time out of your morning. If you're on the East Coast, I know this is a little closer to midday for you. And if you're on the West Coast, thank you for starting your day a little bit earlier than you otherwise would. A huge thank you to Jerry Gage Anderson and Wendy Wen. They are true visionaries. I know anyone on this call that works at Anaplan, you will be hearing from them again, whether it's at Anaplan Live or some other more local events. They're based in Boston, so if you're there and you want to hear more of what they have to say, I highly recommend taking a moment to try to get lunch with them or coffee with them. They are visionaries here, like I said. So thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Wendy, for being leaders in this space, leaders in thought leadership in general, and driving success at your organization. And thank you for partnering with us, Anaplan and Anavate. Yeah. Thank you, Koros. All right, we'll talk soon, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you all. It's been a pleasure.